The middle-aged woman walked into the courtroom in Boone County, West Virginia, with a heavy expression on her face, yet still tried to remain calm. She was a mother, and that is exactly what made this case so much harder to accept. In court, the story this mother wanted the world to see was not a story of cruelty. It was wrapped in the appearance of illness, helplessness, and a family living in isolation. Her daughter, a 14-year-old girl, was said to have an eating problem. The girl did not want to go outside. She did not want to attend school in person. She became more and more separated from the outside world. If that was all someone heard, some people might think this was a tragedy of illness, of poor access to health care, or of a mother who did not know what to do when her child was deteriorating. But then the evidence came out. Investigators did not find a child who had only been neglected for a few days. They found signs of a process that had lasted for years. No doctor, no real treatment, no in-person school, no timely intervention. And in the end, when the emergency call was made, everything was already too late. The 14-year-old girl was found in such a state of emaciation that authorities described her as almost nothing but skin and bones. A child who should have been protected, nourished, and taken to emergency care long before that, instead stopped breathing inside the very home where her mother and grandparents lived with her. What you are about to watch is not an ordinary violent crime case. This is the story of a case of neglect that unfolded slowly, silently, over many years right behind the doors of a seemingly ordinary family. And every detail you are watching has been verified through investigative records, indictments, testimony in court, and the sentence handed down at Boone County Circuit Court. This is a case that shook West Virginia, not only because of Kyneddi Miller, but also because of the chilling question behind it. How could a child disappear from school, from doctors, from society for years without anyone being able to save her? If you have never heard this story before, prepare yourself, because what happened in Morrisville, West Virginia, in April 2024 will force you to question the line between helplessness, neglect, and crime. Now, if this is your first time here, I'm really glad you found this channel. Every day, I dive deep into real criminal cases, breaking them down piece by piece so we can actually understand what happened and why. If that sounds like something you'd be into, go ahead and hit subscribe. It's free, and it means a lot. Okay, now let's get back to the case. To understand why that mother eventually had to stand before the court, plead guilty, and face a sentence of 15 years to life in prison, we have to go back to the days before Kyneddi Miller was found. Morrisville is a small, quiet community tucked into Boone County, West Virginia. It is the kind of place where neighbors know each other by name, where front porches stay lit in the evenings, and where a missing face is eventually noticed. It was here, on Cameo Road, that a family of 4 shared a home and where, over the course of several years, a young girl slowly disappeared from the world without anyone outside those walls truly knowing what was happening inside. Kyneddi Miller was 14 years old. By all accounts, from those who knew her before her isolation began, she was described as kind, loving, and full of life. Her mother, Julie Ann Miller, was 49 years old at the time the case came to light. The two did not live alone. Sharing the same home were Kyneddi's maternal grandparents, Jerry Carter Stone, 75 years old, and Donna Sue Stone, 76. The 4 of them occupied the residence together, a household that, from the outside, appeared unremarkable. Kyneddi's biological father had been separated from her mother for some time. He had not stopped trying to reach his daughter. According to information later included in court documents, he had attempted to make contact with Kyneddi at least 10 times in the period leading up to the case. Each attempt was turned away. He had begun the process of consulting a lawyer in hopes of finding a legal path to see her. He never got that chance. Little has been reported publicly about Julie Miller's employment or the household's financial situation. What is known is that Kyneddi had an older sister who had previously lived with the family during earlier years. That sister, according to prosecutors, had taken an active role in shielding Kyneddi from instability and difficult circumstances within the home. The household, as it was later described in court, was not a safe or stable environment for a child. In late 2019 and into early 2020, Kyneddi Miller stopped attending public school. Her mother told school officials that Kyneddi would be homeschooled going forward. The stated reason was concern about COVID-19 specifically, worry that Kyneddi might bring the virus home and put her elderly grandparents at risk. It was a concern that, at the time, was not unusual for families across the country. But for Kyneddi, the withdrawal from school marked the beginning of an almost complete disappearance from public life. Under West Virginia law, parents who choose to homeschool their children are required to conduct and document annual academic assessments. These records must be submitted to the state at specific grade intervals. For Kyneddi, those assessments were never properly completed or submitted. No follow-up was initiated by school or state officials. From 2020 through 2023, Kyneddi did not leave the house. Neighbors and extended family members who inquired about her were told she was tired or that she simply did not want to see anyone. According to Donna Stone, Kyneddi had stepped outside the home on approximately 2 occasions over the entire span of 4 years. She received no medical care during that time, not a single doctor's visit in at least 4 years, according to what investigators later determined. In March 2023, a distant relative contacted a West Virginia State Police trooper directly. The relative expressed concern that Kyneddi had not been seen in public for a very long time. 2 troopers responded and visited the home. They spoke with Kyneddi and observed her. At that time, they reported that she appeared to be in generally acceptable physical condition. She told them she was afraid of being around other people because of COVID. One trooper described the exchange as somewhat unusual, but found no visible signs of neglect or harm. The troopers then went to a nearby Child Protective Services office to informally report the visit. According to the CPS office, no record of that conversation was ever logged. No referral was officially opened. No caseworker followed up. In early 2024, Kyneddi's condition began to deteriorate rapidly. Her biological father continued to be turned away. Relatives and neighbors who reached out were given the same deflections as before. Nothing from the outside world reached her. The events that unfolded inside the home on Cameo Road over the months preceding April 2024 were not the result of a single decision or a single moment. They were the result of a sustained and deliberate pattern, a daily failure to act in the face of a child's visible and worsening condition. Kyneddi had shown signs of an eating disorder, according to family members who later spoke to investigators. She had not been eating for months. Her physical condition had declined to the point where she could no longer take care of herself. In the final 4 to 5 days of her life, she was unable to move on her own. She remained lying on the floor of the bathroom, on a thin foam pad. Julie Miller was present in the home during this time. So were Jerry and Donna Stone. All 3 adults were aware of Kyneddi's condition. None of them called for emergency help. None of them transported her to a hospital. According to court records, Kyneddi, in her final 2 days, expressed to those around her that she no longer wanted to live. That statement went unanswered in any meaningful way. The Boone County prosecuting attorney, Dan Holstein, later described this period plainly. He said that Kyneddi spent the last several days of her life alone on a bathroom floor. He noted that what happened to her was not the result of a single act, but of a prolonged and intentional failure, a daily choice not to seek help, repeated until it was too late. As Judge Stacy Nowicki Eldridge would later state at sentencing, there is a point at which inaction becomes intentional non-action. That threshold, the judge said, had clearly been crossed. Kyneddi Miller passed away on the morning of the 17th of April 2024. On the morning of the 17th of April 2024, Donna Stone found her granddaughter unresponsive on the bathroom floor. At that point, after days of watching the girl's condition worsen without intervention, she made the call to 911. Emergency personnel and deputies from the Boone County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to the residence on Cameo Road. When they arrived, they found Kyneddi Miller lying motionless on the bathroom floor, on the same foam pad where she had been for days. She was pronounced deceased at the scene. The first responders were visibly affected by what they encountered. Deputies described Kyneddi's physical state as shocking. In subsequent court proceedings, prosecuting attorney Holstein described it in more specific terms for the record. He said that there was almost no soft tissue remaining on her body. He said she appeared as though her skin had been draped over bone. Her limbs, he said, did not look real. She stood 5 feet and 3 inches tall. At the time of her passing, she weighed 58 pounds. It was a scene, Holstein said. Unlike anything he had encountered in his years as a prosecutor, and he had witnessed many difficult cases. The 911 call that brought authorities to the home on Cameo Road was made by Donna Stone, Kyneddi's grandmother. She reported that her granddaughter was in cardiac arrest. That call was the first and only time any member of the household had contacted emergency services regarding Kyneddi's condition. The full audio recording and transcript of that call have not been made publicly available as of the time of this account. What is known is that the call was brief, that it described a juvenile in cardiac arrest, and that it gave no indication, at least not in what has been reported, of the length of time Kyneddi had been in that state or the circumstances that had led to it. First responders arrived and took over the scene. The household, which had remained sealed from outside contact for years, was now the subject of a criminal investigation. Deputies secured the scene and began the process of understanding what they were looking at. The home was occupied by 3 adults who had been living there alongside Kyneddi. Officers spoke with those present, including Donna Stone, who confirmed that Kyneddi had not left the home more than twice in approximately 4 years and had not attended school since late 2019. Kyneddi was pronounced deceased at the scene. She was not transported to a hospital while still alive. Emergency medical personnel could do nothing upon arrival. The case was immediately treated as a suspicious death. The physical evidence, Kyneddi's condition, the environment she had been living in, the absence of any medical records for years made it clear that this was not a straightforward situation. Investigators from the Boone County Sheriff's Office remained at the property and began the formal process of collecting information. The investigation that followed revealed a picture of extreme and prolonged neglect behind closed doors. Detectives pieced together what Kyneddi's life had looked like over the preceding years: her withdrawal from school, her isolation, the absence of medical care, and the family's repeated use of COVID-related explanations to keep the outside world from asking too many questions. Investigators confirmed that Kyneddi had not received any medical treatment in at least 4 years. School records showed she had not been enrolled in or attending public school since late 2019 or early 2020. A review of homeschooling documentation revealed that required assessments had not been submitted. No agency had followed up. Family members informed detectives that Kyneddi had been dealing with an eating disorder. They said she had not been consuming food in the months leading up to her passing. According to what investigators determined, she had been physically unable to care for herself for approximately a week before she died. In the final 4 to 5 days of her life, she had remained on the bathroom floor without receiving any form of medical attention, food, or meaningful care. Prosecutors later noted that no one outside the household had known the true state of Kyneddi's condition. Relatives and neighbors who had asked about her were told she was resting or did not wish to have visitors. Her biological father, who had tried to reach her multiple times, was similarly turned away. The household had maintained a wall of silence that had held for years. Boone County prosecuting attorney Dan Holstein, a veteran of many difficult cases, stated that what he saw in the evidence from this investigation was unlike anything he had previously encountered. The morning after Kyneddi's body was found, on the 18th of April 2024, Julie Miller was taken into custody. She was charged with child neglect, resulting in death. She waived her right to a preliminary hearing on the 29th of April 2024. Investigators continued their work in the weeks that followed. On the 20th of May 2024, Jerry Carter Stone and Donna Sue Stone, Kyneddi's maternal grandparents, were also arrested. Both were charged with child neglect, resulting in death. The criminal complaint noted that they had been living in the home with Kyneddi throughout the period in question and were aware of her condition. Julie Miller was held at the South Central Regional Jail on a bond set at $250,000. The grandparents were released on bond following their arrest and appeared in court for preliminary hearings on the 30th of May, 2024. Jerry Stone requested a mental evaluation at that hearing. That request was granted. In the days and weeks following the arrests, investigators gathered statements from those involved. Donna Stone spoke with detectives and confirmed several key facts: that Kyneddi had left the home on no more than 2 occasions in 4 years, that she had not been attending school, and that the family believed she had an eating disorder. Julie Miller was held in custody and represented by legal counsel. In June 2024, a Child Protective Services investigator was reportedly sent to the jail to speak with Miller, allegedly asking questions about Kyneddi's sleeping habits without notifying Miller's attorneys in advance. When this came to light, Boone County Circuit Judge Stacy Nowicki Eldridge issued a clear directive. All contact with Julie Miller was to go through her legal representatives. The judge stated that any future unauthorized contact would be treated as a criminal matter. The incident raised additional questions about how the state had handled and continued to handle the case. It became one of several points of tension between the justice system, the defense, and state agencies in the months that followed. In September 2024, a grand jury in Boone County formally indicted all 3 defendants, Julie Miller, Jerry Stone, and Donna Stone, on 2 counts each: murder of a child by a parent, guardian, or custodian by failure to provide necessities, and child neglect resulting in death. In October 2024, all 3 entered pleas of not guilty. By that same month, Jerry Stone had been evaluated and found incompetent to stand trial. He was committed to a state psychiatric facility where he would remain under the jurisdiction of the court for the foreseeable future. His charges were effectively set aside. Prosecutors gathered photographs taken at the scene, medical examiner findings, school and homeschooling records, and testimony from investigators who had interviewed members of the household. Those photographs of Kyneddi were later described by Judge Nowicki Eldridge as beyond her capacity to fully process documentation of suffering that, she said, fell outside the range of what she had previously been required to confront in a courtroom. The case also drew significant attention to the state's child welfare infrastructure. Investigative reporting revealed that Child Protective Services had been made aware of concerns about Kyneddi more than a year before her passing, and that those concerns had not resulted in any documented protective action. A federal audit, released in November 2024, found that West Virginia had failed to comply with 91% of applicable investigation requirements in a sampling of child abuse and neglect reports from the prior year. The audit had been prompted, in part, by the attention surrounding Kyneddi Miller's case. Julie Miller had been scheduled to stand trial on the 2nd of December 2025 on charges of murder by a parent or guardian by failure to provide necessities and child neglect, resulting in death. Her legal team had filed a motion earlier in the year to move the trial out of Boone County, arguing that the volume of local media coverage had made it impossible to seat an impartial jury. Judge Nowicki Eldridge heard the arguments and denied the motion. The trial would remain in Boone County. The cases against Miller and Donna Stone were formally separated. Stone's trial was rescheduled for the 24th of February, 2026. On the 21st of November, 2025, 1 week before her scheduled trial date, Julie Miller appeared in Boone County Circuit Court with her attorneys, Ron Walters and Beverly Hall. She entered a guilty plea to the charge of death of a child by a parent, guardian, or custodian. The plea hearing was not without a moment of uncertainty. When Judge Nowicki Eldridge read aloud the factual basis of the charge and asked Miller whether she agreed with that account, Miller responded with a single word: no. A brief recess was called. After the break, Miller returned to the courtroom. The judge read the factual basis a second time. This time, Julie Miller said yes. She formally admitted that her actions and her failure to act had been intentional, and that those failures had directly led to her daughter's death. Prosecuting attorney Holstein noted that the guilty plea served the interests of justice. He acknowledged that taking the case to trial on a murder charge would have required proving that Miller had specifically intended to cause Kyneddi's passing, a standard that carried some legal risk, given that the medical examiner had not been able to make a definitive determination on that point. The plea, Holstein said, secured the same sentencing range as a murder conviction while removing the uncertainty of a jury trial. On the 25th of February 2026, Julie Ann Miller stood before Judge Stacy Nowicki Eldridge in Boone County Circuit Court for sentencing. Kyneddi's older sister delivered a victim impact statement. She spoke through tears. She described a childhood shaped by the need to protect her younger sibling from the instability that surrounded them. She described what it meant to lose her. The Boone County prosecutor addressed the court as well. Holstein told the judge that in all his years of working difficult cases, what he had witnessed in the evidence from this one was in a category of its own. He spoke about the nature of the harm, not a single act, but a sustained and daily failure. He described the final days of Kyneddi's life as a period of suffering that should never have been allowed to occur, particularly within a home where 3 adults were present and capable of calling for help. Julie Miller spoke briefly on her own behalf. Her voice broke. She said she loved her daughter. She said she missed her every single day. She said Kyneddi had been the best little girl since the day she was born. Judge Nowicki Eldridge then delivered her decision. She spoke carefully and with evident weight. She said the photographs she had reviewed in connection with this case were beyond her level of comprehension. She said no child should ever experience what Kyneddi experienced. She said this child deserved, at the absolute minimum, a mother who provided enough food that her body did not consume itself. She stated plainly that there is a point at which a pattern of inaction becomes a deliberate choice, and that point, in this case, had been reached and passed long before anyone called for help. She imposed the maximum sentence permitted under the law, 15 years to life in state prison. If Julie Miller is ever granted parole, she will be required to serve 50 years of supervised release. She must also register as a child abuse and neglect offender within 3 days of her release from incarceration. Prosecuting attorney Holstein, speaking after the ruling, said that if there was ever a case that warranted the maximum penalty, this was it. As for the other defendants, Jerry Stone remains under court jurisdiction at a psychiatric facility, where he will be subject to periodic review for the remainder of his life. Donna Stone's trial was scheduled to proceed in the spring of 2026. The case of Kyneddi Miller did not end with a sentencing. It opened a wider reckoning about what it means to have systems designed to protect children, and what happens when those systems fail to reach a child who needed them most. The case of Kyneddi Miller stands as one of the most sobering child welfare failures in West Virginia's recent history. A 14-year-old girl lost her life not because help was unavailable, but because every adult responsible for her chose, repeatedly and over years, not to seek it. Her mother, Julie Ann Miller, was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Her grandparents faced their own legal consequences. The systems that existed to protect Kyneddi schools, Child Protective Services, law enforcement each had an opportunity to intervene and did not follow through. A child who deserved protection received none. The most significant message this case carries is that neglect is not passive. It is a choice, made again and again, until consequences become irreversible. Julie Miller did not act in a single moment of crisis. She made a deliberate decision, day after day, to withhold care from a child who could not advocate for herself. The court made this point explicitly. At some threshold, inaction becomes intentional. That principle matters beyond the courtroom. It applies to every adult in a position of responsibility, whether as a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, or a professional working within a system designed to protect children. This case leaves several lessons that extend well beyond Boone County, West Virginia. First, isolation is a warning sign. When a child disappears from school, from community, and from the view of anyone outside the household, that absence demands a response, not an assumption that everything is fine. Second, systems are only as effective as the people operating them. A trooper made a welfare visit. A referral was never logged. A girl fell through the gap. Accountability within institutions matters as much as the rules those institutions are built on. Third, speaking up is not interference, it is responsibility. Neighbors noticed, relatives noticed. The willingness to make that difficult call, to report a concern, even when uncertain, can be the difference between a child receiving help and a child being lost entirely. Kyneddi Miller deserved that call. She never received it,